What's up guys, today we are talking about the newly anticipated Yu-Gi-Oh set, Phantom Revenge, scheduled for OTS release date tomorrow in Europe, delayed to the 19th in NA, but that won't stop us from talking about it ahead of time, so let's get right into it. So here we are with our Phantom Revenge pack art. This is a deck building set. It has 3 new archetypes, the first of which is ENNEACRAFT. This is a pendulum flip machine archetype that has a control and burn sub-theme. Then we have HECAHANDS. This is an archetype of all illusion monsters that focuses on taking your opponent's monsters and using them for your own purposes. And then lastly we have KEWL, which is all tuner monsters including the extra deck, and they have a synergy that focuses on using materials in the hand for synchro summons. If you made it this far in the video, consider dropping a like and subscribe so that you can see the next upload and help the channel grow. Thanks so much. So let's jump right in with our first archetype. Like I said, ENNEACRAFT is all pendulums, all flips, and all machines, but it consists of light and earth monsters. They have a sub-theme of flip and burn, and let's talk a little bit about what they're trying to do. First, the level 1 monsters and spell cards provide consistency with strong search and card draw effects. Second, they use their high level monsters to create interaction points and removal effects. Once they've been special summoned to the field face down, these cards have different trigger conditions that can allow them to control your plays. And lastly, through controlling the game, they'll amass counters on the cards that they put in their pendulum scale and spend them during the end phase to burn you for game. So they slow down the game and they control you through their effects, and by activating and resolving these effects and flipping their monsters face up, they facilitate their win condition. They don't need to play proactively and attack you. They don't need to use effects to actually generate burn damage. It's all a result of playing their game plan and controlling what you do as their opponent. So what are some of the pros and cons of the ENNEACRAFT strategy? First, there's excellent potential with this deck going first. And we see that with many control strategies, but this deck really likes to go first. And that's because they need to set their monsters on the field, almost like how a spell and trap deck would have to set its back row to interact with the opponent. So you're searching all of these interaction pieces with your level 1 monsters, and then you're resolving effects to special summon them face down, and then when your opponent plays, you flip them face up and you resolve powerful effects. So going first is great for this strategy. It's highly consistent because there are a lot of different search effects inside the deck. You have 4 different level 1 names and all of them can search, and then the normal spell lets you basically like reload. You shuffle back things from hand and field and you draw that many cards. And then you also have access to Dominus Purge because all of your monsters are light and earth. So you can just play Dominus Purge as an additional way to interact with your opponent. Lastly, it can be hard to interact with face down monsters as a player going second. Things like Droplet, things like Imperm on the draw don't feel as good when your opponent's monsters that are going to interact with you are face down on the field. And with that, let's move on to the cons. First, this deck feels behind going second even more than other decks. Because your first turn is so setup oriented, when you go second, you're not really trying to like OTK on the crackback, you're just hoping that you get to establish your plan to then interact with your opponent's board after you've played into what they've already presented. It can feel like a really uphill battle. Next, your turn 1 plays can lose to cards like Droll and Evenly Matched. Because you're doing so much searching and so much draw, getting hit on the wrong ad can really stop you short. And there's no Omni Negate built into this deck on your opponent's turn. The big whale only Omni Negates on your own turn, and so if you set something huge up and your opponent goes second post side and hits you with an Evenly Match, it can feel really nasty. And lastly, the monster effects to summon from the hand face down lock you into face down special summons for the whole turn. So it's hard to mix and match this deck with other strategies, which puts a hard ceiling on the end boards it can produce. So moving right along from ENNEACRAFT, a deck that wants to control the game, we have HECAHANDS, a deck that wants to control your monster cards. This consists of light and dark illusion type monsters, and the strategy is as follows. They use their light attribute monsters in the hand to serve as consistency pieces, summoning from the deck and adding spell traps. They use their dark attribute monsters with unique summoning conditions to play themselves to the field and take monsters from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And then they use their spell card to increase the consistency of their end board by setting their traps for interaction. They also can summon their fusion monster by tributing one of their monsters and a monster originally owned by you, which gives them even more consistency by searching during the main phase, and triggers the graveyard effects of the light attribute monsters to special summon or set spell traps from the graveyard. Overall, the deck is trying to play a pretty honest, incremental advantage based game plan where they try to out-resource you, take your cards and use them for better purposes, and then kill you with the illusion package. So what are the pros and cons of HECAHANDS? First, the low end end boards are pretty consistent. Normally you just have to resolve like one summon from the deck or one search, and you can get usually to like an end board that includes one negate, maybe a monster negate or a spell trap negate of your choice. These boards aren't really a high reach, and you can get there through a different variety of ways just using the HECAHANDS cards. Secondly, there's some unique interaction in this deck compared to the rest of the stuff that exists in the metagame. There aren't a lot of decks that are trying to take monsters away from their opponent, and one of monsters on the Forbidden and Limited list could be specifically victimized by this strategy. Lastly, we have the synergy with existing cards in the Illusion archetype, including the Chimera Fusion package, which can add some big consistency, battle damage, and removal effects to this strategy. As for the cons, we have the following. First, there's some predictable routing in this deck. Using the normal spell to route for specific pieces is a telegraphed move and can be hit with Ash Blossom, and sometimes requires an additional tribute on interaction, which can cause you to go negative. Thankfully, the graveyard effects of the light attribute monsters can help mitigate this a little bit. We also have the fact that the high-end end boards require taking an opponent's monster on your first turn of the game. The lottery effect of the one that rips from hand isn't always reliable, same with the one that takes from the top of the deck. The only one that you can consistently rely on is taking from the graveyard if you end up getting hand trapped, which can take away from other aspects of your end board if you're not careful. And then the last thing that I'm going to say about this deck in terms of weaknesses is that it does end up playing just a little bit too honest. You're often one-for-oneing yourself with your search and set effects, and going +1 incrementally off of the fusion monster each turn doesn't always cut it into modern archetypes. And last but not least, we have Cool Tune. This is a multi-attribute, multi-type tuner archetype, and it's the archetype out of the set that I'm personally most interested in playing. So let's get into it. First, many of the main deck monsters and the spell cards provide consistency for your plays, and the graveyard effects of the main deck tuners provide interaction effect. The level 5 synchros that have specific name requirements provide interaction on your opponent's turn, and there's a level 6 synchro that provides them with protection and additional backup for interaction. The field spell also insulates your plays through interaction by giving you an additional normal summon and a way to summon from the deck by tributing a monster you control. The quick play spell provides consistency by searching and gives you a way to synchro on your opponent's turn. And so we'll hop right in with the pros and cons. First, the deck has all different kinds of lines of play from many different starters. Optimally, you're going to be normal summoning Q into Red Nova to start playing, but there's all different ways to start with different tuners and different materials in your hand to find your pieces to end on your reliable level 5s. Second, your end boards provide choice regarding the timing and use of your interaction pieces. The tuners trigger when they're used as material, and you synchro using the effect of the level 5 synchro, Cool Tune Remix, or the quick play spell, Cool Tune Synchro. As for the cons, the first one is that the tuner lock associated with a lot of the powerful effects in this deck can be hard to justify. By restricting yourself to just tuner monsters, you're picking and choosing from a really wide range of potential end boards and limiting yourself to considerably less. The mixed attributes and types aspect of this deck makes it hard to slot in like generic support that would help you find your pieces, like Allure of Darkness or something like that. And lastly, this deck loses pretty hard to Dominus Impulse specifically. The effect of Killer Tune Q can be negated by it, the effect of the field spell to summon from your deck can be negated by it, and the effect of the quick play spell to search and then synchro summon can also be negated by it. It's pretty tough. So that's Phantom Revenge. With all that being said, I hope you learned something today, and that maybe you're interested in building one of the decks that's coming out of this deck building pack. I'll be totally honest with you, I don't think that these decks are really going to jump in and shake up the meta in a really impactful way. Across the board, I feel like they play a little bit too honestly, sticking mostly to themselves and focusing on what they can do internally. But I do think they have a door open for really strong legacy support as we continue to see what develops in the 2026 competitive season, and I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 additional pieces of support, particularly for Cool Tune, push these decks into meta competitive viability, especially alongside something like a ban list. The last thing I wanted to talk about regarding Phantom Revenge, and this may come across as a little bit complainy, is the rarity distribution of the set. I already talked about the delays, which are a bummer for NA, but with distribution and supply chain, it's understandable and it's not really something that's in control of Konami or local game stores. I work at an OTS store, so it's a little bit of a bummer that I'm not going to be able to support my OTS because I want to pick up the singles as quickly as possible, which will likely lead to me acquiring Europrint. But on a completely different note, the rarity distribution in this set is kind of unjustifiable. For a deck building pack that introduces 3 themes, to have 50% of the highest rarity slots attributed to Cool Tune kind of feels like Konami picking a favorite kid. and telling people that, like, you know, yeah, it's a deck building pack and there's 3 different themes, but they're not really actually equal. This one is the good one, and you can tell because it has most of the high rarity cards, whereas ENNEACRAFT only gets 1 Ultra in the entire set. So it's 1, 4, 5, which is pretty egregious distribution if you ask me. I'm not saying this to be overly critical, I'm just saying that product should support all players, and it shouldn't really be seen as like a gouging financial opportunity when they know that one of the decks is going to be more compelling. That should inspire them to release maybe a more balanced product, or to have faith in the fact that players are going to try to play stuff for other reasons than just because it might be strong. But I could literally make an entire separate video about rarity distributions in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I might just do that anyway. So I hope that you enjoyed today's upload. I'm sorry that it came up a little bit late at night, but I hope you have a great one, and I'll see you tomorrow.